Hi guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Britney. So for today's episode, we are going to be covering The Trial on Netflix. So this is just season 1, and just to let you know why I decided to watch this show. This is another dub series, and I've been interested in watching mystery, thriller type TV shows, and so this obviously fits in that genre. And I do have to say that one thing that I did not like about this show is the dub voices. This is an Italian show. The English voices really did not match any of the characters, and that just really annoyed me, and I'm very sensitive to that because I feel like it just throws off the whole vibe of the show. The other thing that I noticed was that the English verbal translation seemed more accurate than the English version of the closed caption, because the caption seemed a little bit of a looser translation. It just seemed less accurate, and so I didn't like that distinction because I could tell that there was a difference between what was actually said in English and then what was written in the caption, so that bothered me as well. And then one thing I do want to call out that I really enjoyed about this show was I liked how they did several reenactments throughout the trial, and then kind of also while they were investigating of what they were trying to say happened leading up to Angelica's death. And so I feel like that's not something that I've really seen the way that they did it, and so I thought it was good because instead of just listening to people describe something, you could hear them describe it and then also see it play out on the screen, how they're trying to convince us that it happened. Yeah, so with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the episode. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our 5 key points of the season. So for the first point, we have Angelica is murdered. So Angelica's body is found, and we have her identity quickly confirmed. The lead prosecutor, Elena, she ends up going to speak to Angelica's family, and at some point she realizes that she's actually Angelica's bio mom. She had given her up for adoption when she was 18 years old, and her father was also high up in the court system and in the government, I suspect, and he wasn't really too involved with helping her make that decision, and so she ended up giving the child up for adoption. We also quickly have a suspect. His name is Claudio. This is a guy who's from those movies, 365, those erotica romance movies. And so I was really surprised to see him in this TV show because I really have not seen him in anything other than 365 days, however you say it. Anyway, so he is quickly the suspect. He is a married man. He's married into the Monaco family. They're a really rich and powerful family in this part of Italy, and he is obviously worried because he married into money, and he doesn't want to hurt his standing and his position with the family if this affair has come to light, and then also if he's involved in this murder trial case situation. And so he ends up being questioned by Elena, and he tells her that he was not involved. He didn't kill her. He denies sleeping with her, but we obviously know that he was the one that got her pregnant. And so what happened is, I can't recall how this happened, but maybe a few days later, we see news breaking about a prostitution ring in that part of the city, and so this leads to Claudio killing himself. And so this is, for me, I wasn't sure if he killed himself. We do see him in a bathtub. It's filled with blood, and the assumption is that he committed suicide, and I wasn't sure if he did that or if he was murdered, and I actually feel like he was murdered and they just made it look like a suicide because he was the one who was causing them all of these problems by sleeping with the girl. And then we do have, after Claudio is found dead in the bathtub, we do have Linda quickly arrested as the person who is now being looked at for killing Angelica, and this is corroborated by the fact that Angelica's best friend said that she saw a woman similar to Linda arguing with Angelica just before she died. And so all of this is happening, and it's impacting the Monaco family. We also, as a side note, have Elena struggling in her marriage. Her husband wants to leave her because she's so focused and committed to her work, and she's actually supposed to leave with him to go to, I think, America, and she is giving her resignation to her boss, and obviously this case falls into her lap, she realizes that she's connected to the victim, and she's actually not supposed to be working on this case because of her relationship to the victim. And then we do see that her father at some point during the season finds out about this, and he basically tells her that what she's doing is improper, that she should have stepped back from the case and all of this stuff. And so we'll obviously see how that plays out. As a result of Elena figuring out that she is Angelica's mother, this reunites her with Angelica's biological father, and so they start to get intimate and kind of like reconnect and redevelop the relationship, whatever. So we know that Elena shouldn't be working the case. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of different factors involved in terms of figuring out why this happened and who committed the crime. And so again, we have Linda in jail, and she is being looked at for killing Angelica. So for the second point, the famous 11 minutes theory and the initial key testimony. So we do have an old man who testifies at first to saying that he heard Angelica arguing with a woman. He couldn't really say what the woman looks like because he was so far away. And the thing about him is that he has really good hearing, and there's this funny moment where he was able to out Baroni for making a remark of saying that he will tear him apart when he's questioning him as a witness. And he didn't realize that the old man heard him, and then he was kind of like challenging the old man's ability to hear well, see well, that type of thing, and kind of trying to portray him as an unreliable witness. And so he's able to hit him with that, oh, well, I heard what you just said about me. And so this makes Baroni look bad and obviously strengthens the old man as a witness and testifying to what he heard the night that Angelica died. We also have two of Linda's friends testifying. They are basically covering for Linda. They're saying that she was at the party the whole time. We do have one of the friends getting spooked, and then she finally comes clean and says that Linda did leave the party, they didn't know where she went, and that sort of thing. And so this is a blow to Linda's defense because she has been maintaining that she was at the party the whole time, she never left. And so we're starting to see cracks in her defense and how her support system is rallying around her. We also have Angelica's supposed best friends testifying to everything that was happening leading up to Angelica's death. And we do have at the end of Sylvia's testimony, she basically outs herself as the person who killed Angelica. And I was really surprised by this because this could have easily just been a mistrial right then and there. But I think they had way too much evidence that could have convicted Linda without that testimony, and so I think that is why they were able to continue the trial. And then we also see this as a huge blow to Elena because she really prides herself on being a good prosecutor. She looks at all of the facts, she's able to read people well, and then she's able to basically get people to confess even though they have been lying to her, basically. And so she's able to break them down and get the truth. And so she's really big on this, and I think that is one of the reasons why she knew that she was able to continue working on this case, because she just cared about the truth. It wasn't about her getting revenge for her daughter or anything like that. And so I actually think that she was the right person to take on this case just because of her strengths as a prosecutor and as a investigator and someone who wants the truth. This is also another blow to Elena personally, with Sylvia kind of betraying her on the witness stand because she had been getting super close to this witness, making sure that she was okay, having conversations with her, talking to her about Angelica because this was her daughter that she didn't know as the girl was growing up. And so obviously she's trying to learn as much as she can about Angelica and then also learn as much as she can for the case. And so this is a huge blow because she spent all of this time getting to know this person because of the connection that she had to Angelica, but this person really wasn't good friends with Angelica. They just wanted to be in the spotlight. They wanted to get famous, and so this is just a blow in the sense of it's making us kind of question her judgment as far as is she the right person to do this case. And as I said, I think that she is the perfect person to be doing this case. We also have a maid testifying that works for the Monaco family, and she worked, I guess, specifically in Linda's home. And so she testified that Linda wasn't herself, that she was upset over how the marriage was going and stuff like that. And so this maid did not paint Linda in the best light, and she made her seem kind of like unstable and kind of like emotionally all over the place and things like that. And so this again is kind of helping the prosecution because they are able to use this to say that Linda was so distraught over the fact that her husband was having an affair that she went and attacked the woman that he was having the affair with. We also have a ex-girlfriend coming in to testify, and she accuses Linda of running her over and putting her in a wheelchair permanently, and that she was paid off by the family to keep this quiet. And so this is the ex-girlfriend of Claudio, and again, this is continuing the narrative that Linda is a unstable person. She doesn't do well when there's other women involved. When it comes to her husband, she's a jealous person, and that she will resort to violence in order to eliminate her competition. The third key point that we have happening is that Elena's co-worker, Andrioli, is outed on the stand. And so we know from watching the season that Elena is the superior in this relationship with her co-worker, Andrioli. And we also know that Andrioli came from like I think a runway train or something like that type of police environment. So he wasn't necessarily equipped to do this job from like a training sense, but he was knowledgeable in handling investigative work, if that makes sense. So anyway, they get him on the stand because he was the one who found the cigarette butt with Linda's DNA that put her basically outside of the party where Angelico was murdered. And so Baroni is cross-examining him, and he is asking him, how did you discover the cigarette butt? How did you handle the evidence? Where did you get the kit to process the evidence, that kind of thing, or collect the evidence, that sort of thing. And so what Baroni actually knows, because he was given this information, is that Andrioli mishandled the evidence. He didn't touch the cigarette butt with gloves, and so his DNA is on there as well, and something like that. So basically, he made it easy for Baroni to say that he planted the evidence with Linda's DNA because he had been in a room with Linda being interrogated, and so he had access to her DNA, supposedly. And so this was just a bad look for the prosecution again, because they should have done things by the book, and they didn't know that this happened, and they put him on the stand, and so all of this came out. So what this led to is that we have Andrioli getting suspended by Elena. She's really disappointed that he didn't come to her and tell her that this is what he did, and then allowed himself to get on the witness stand. And then they also realized that they do have a mole in their department, because how else would Baroni have known to kind of question Andrioli in this way to get him to admit to mishandling the evidence? And so Elena was able to figure out who the mole is, and then that woman is forced to kind of leave the department. The fourth major thing that we have happening is Elena is outed and suspended. And so we have Baroni at some point being asked to play dirty by Linda's dad. He really wants his daughter free from jail. He's willing to do whatever it takes to basically get her freed. And so he has Baroni follow Elena to get dirt on her. And so what this leads to is them using their PI person to follow Elena. They get pictures of her with her lover, and they find out that this person is actually Angelica's birth dad. And so they do have access to guest logs from 18 years ago, I guess, at the place where they put the daughter up for adoption. And so they see the lover's name. They know that he's Angelica's father, and so they're just questioning Elena's decision to get involved with the father during the trial and stuff like that. And so I can't recall what exactly leads to this, but Baroni ends up asking Elena out to get a drink, and he's basically getting information from her, but he's also setting her up to leave her DNA on the glasses that they're drinking from, so that he can test her DNA with Angelica's and find out if there's a connection there, because at this point they don't know who Angelica's bio mom is, but he's kind of picking up on the fact that Elena is kind of more emotionally involved in this case, even though she is doing everything by the book in the sense of how she is investigating, in my opinion. We also see that Baroni has Angelica's co-worker on the stand. Her name is Michaela, and he's basically using her to kind of introduce the name of another witness that he wants to bring to the court. And the reason why he can't just introduce this person as a witness himself is because this was something that they obtained illegally. They had their PI person follow this guy that came from another witness. So the Sylvia girl from earlier, she had talked about how Angelica was arguing with the man with the white van, and so they were able to find the white van, and then they basically wiretapped the guy's phone to listen in on a phone conversation. So first they called him and spooked him by threatening him, and then they listened in on a phone call that he made afterwards to his mother, kind of talking about what was happening, and his mother was kind of like blaming him for getting involved with Angelica or whatever. And so what we know at this point is that this guy is a neighbor of Angelica's, and he has some sort of connection to the night in question because he was there and things like that. And so he is introduced as a witness, and what happens is the defense is able to accuse Tomei of stalking Angelica. That's the guy's name, and he confirmed that he was actually blackmailing Claudio over the prostitution ring. He was in love with Angelica, but she rejected him, and he was really upset about the fact that the Monaco family and Claudio in particular turned Angelica into this sort of lifestyle, and he was really upset with them for that, and so he wanted to blackmail them to get money from them too, and kind of at least benefit from the situation or whatever. And so what this leads to is that they now know that there's a prostitution ring that the Monaco family is connected to, and that he basically was not the one who killed Angelica. And so the next thing I want to go into is that we do have throughout the season, they're continuing to do investigative work in between each trial, basically, or each hearing. And so one of the things that comes up is that both Baroni and Elena are kind of like working on ways to like help their case or whatever. And so Elena is able to produce a new witness named Zaya, if I'm saying that name correctly. He is someone who Tomei saw or overheard talking on the phone to Angelica, and so this is how we find this new witness. And so what happened was that Angelica was at the party. She was supposed to meet her drug supplier or whatever. They talked on the phone. She sent him away, and that was basically the extent of their conversation. But he did also see the old man who was walking his dog earlier in the show with the good hearing, and then he, I think, did see Angelica arguing or being followed by some woman before he left. And so we have all of these witnesses who are able to corroborate the main story of the fact that Angelica did get into an argument with a woman outside, and then that they themselves were not involved in the crime. And the fifth key point that happens this season is the receipt acquits Linda. So the receipt is a huge turning point in this season. When Elena discovers the receipt, she goes through a range of different emotions. She is upset at Andreoli for not discovering the box sooner. She feels like because she was emotionally involved in this case, or emotionally invested in this case, because of the fact that she was Angelica's mother, that she was basically overzealous and trying to pin everything on the wrong person. And for her, this receipt represents that. And so we do see the scene where Andreoli is telling her, hey, we can't do anything about this now. Just put this stuff back in the box, because the stuff was Linda's belongings. I don't know when it was collected, but they put it in a box and they never opened it as part of their investigation, and they have been investigating for a year. And so she's really upset that they didn't discover this sooner, and he tells her, hey, just put it back. We'll not say anything about this. This won't be discovered, whatever. And so she obviously, because truth is her thing, she wants to come clean. And so the judge that she was outed to by Baroni, she ends up going to him and she tells him, hey, I found this receipt. It proves that Linda was at the party when Angelica was being murdered during those famous 11 minutes. Please consider this, basically. And so the reason why, and I didn't say this earlier, the reason why Elena has to do it this way is because Baroni did out her, just as she was introducing that new witness, Zaya, and so she was forced off of the case and she had to be replaced by someone else. And so the person that she was replaced by was Caputo, and we'll see how that plays out in a second. But Elena just really wanted to do the right thing, and so what hurt her here is that she saw this receipt, she didn't investigate, she didn't go to the bar to double check who purchased the receipt. She didn't even know how the receipt got there. It could have been purchased by someone else and given to Linda to be her alibi or whatever. And so I was really disappointed in the fact that she was a very thorough investigator, that she just took this receipt at face value, and then obviously we see how it plays out where it ended up getting Linda acquitted, but then the receipt was off as far as the time. And so let me just go ahead and talk about a few things first. And so in the aftermath of Elena being forced off of the case, her replacement Caputo comes in, and he's the person who is questioning Zaya. And obviously Elena would question Zaya in a certain way to get him to say the stuff that she wants him to say and introduce basically evidence to the court to further prove that Linda is guilty. And so this Caputo person comes on, and he's basically asking the questions that she would ask, but he's not asking them in the correct way. And so we see her getting frustrated because he's basically allowing Baroni to cross-examine Zaya and make him look bad and whatever and just weaken their case. And so she's really upset by this. This is what leads to her going through the boxes, going through the evidence, and then finding the receipt. And so after she gives the receipt to the judge, she then goes to Baroni and she confronts him with the truth to say, hey, the receipt is the reason why Linda was acquitted. However, the receipt is actually off by 1 hour. So it's not proof that she was at the party. It's proof that she was at the party an hour earlier, but not that she was at the party during those 11 minutes. And so at this point, Baroni is kind of romantically involved with Linda. We saw this throughout the season, that he was getting more emotionally attached to her and things like that. And so what happened is she tells him this evidence or whatever. He then brings it up to Linda, and he realizes that she kind of had an off reaction. She's able to recover it quickly and kind of like play along, but he picks up on this, and so he knows that she is the person who killed Angelica. And so the reason why this is super important for Baroni is because I think midway through the season he realized that he was kind of being played by the Monaco family. There is someone else who I think he works with who was the reason why the Monaco family came to Baroni to represent Linda. It wasn't because they thought that he was a good attorney. It was because that family had information or whatever on his coworker or whatever, and so they were basically being blackmailed into taking the case, and then they were behind the scenes manipulating Baroni into doing the things that they wanted him to do in order to get Linda freed. And then one of the things that I didn't talk about earlier was that at the beginning, Baroni wasn't doing so well, and so Monaco, the father, I can't think of his first name, it's G something. He was very frustrated with Baroni, and so he had Mara, one of his in-house legal counsels, kind of oversee everything that was happening. And we do have at one point, something happens, and Baroni confronts Mara, and she basically admits to witness tampering or whatever. And so he's trying to get her to turn on the Monaco family. He takes her to a hotel, and then he leaves her there. And then when he comes back the next morning, basically she's gone. She's been transferred to another role in America, and so she's not available. And so we kind of see that everything is blowing up for Baroni. And we do see at one point he tells Linda that in order to save herself, she needs to basically admit that her father was the one who killed Angelica, and she refuses to do this. And so we do see this moment where she is speaking during the trial, and she's basically saying, I didn't do this. I was upset about how she she was involved with my husband and how she treated me or whatever, but I didn't do anything to her. I wanted to kill her, but I didn't, and stuff like that. And so she refuses to name her father. She sticks to her story that she didn't do it. And so we have Baroni really wrapped up in this and believing that she is basically sacrificing herself for her father. And so when Elena comes to him with the evidence about the receipt, he is putting all of this into a better understanding in his head, and he's realizing that they've been playing him for a fool all along, and he does not like this. And so lastly, what this leads to is a scene with Elena and Baroni. They meet up and they basically reenact what they think happened based on the evidence and the information that they have. They're able to walk us through how Angelica confronted Claudio about the baby and wanting to get out of the prostitution ring, how she talked about meeting her birth parents, that she threatened them saying, my birth mom Dolores, I'm going to tell her everything I know. And then Claudio gets in a panic, calls the Monaco family, and then Angelica goes to the party, has that interaction with Linda, and then Linda follows her outside, and then they argue, and then we see Linda stab her in the eye with her heel, and then we see the Monaco family henchmen coming and putting Angelica's body in the water. And so one thing that came up from all of this is that they realized that Linda had the murder weapon on her the whole time. It was her heels, and so when she was put into prison or checked into prison, they collected her shoes basically, and so they were never able to examine her shoes because they were just sitting somewhere in the prison, because obviously they collect your belongings and they put you in prison issued gear, whatever, and so they are able to test the heel with the DNA that they have from Elena and Angelica and kind of be able to confirm that it had Angelica's blood on it is the assumption that we're supposed to make from how they have this conversation. And so I really loved how this scene and this season ended with Baroni bringing up the fact that they basically can appeal everything that happened, and then that kind of end the episode and the season. And so to go ahead and wrap all of this up, I really love how the season ended. I really do hope that they obviously appeal and are able to win it. And I was really surprised by this show because I almost stopped watching after episode 5, and it was because of all of the dubbing issues that I didn't like. And so I'm really glad that I stuck with it because I really wanted to know what happened to Angelica, even though I didn't like the theme music and the difference in how the English translation was verbally versus how it was written on the screen. It still was a really, really good show, and I'm really glad that I watched it. It was a little bit different than what I would have normally watched, but I do think that it was interesting enough for me to have continued watching, and I'm glad that I did that. I also wanted to point out how overly involved both lawyers were in the case. So we have Elena obviously kind of emotionally invested in this case because this was her daughter that was murdered, and then we have Baroni, being blackmailed and in the Monaco's family's pocket, and then also having a romantic relationship with Linda, who was his friend's wife. And then I also thought it was a really good ending that we got to see Elena pregnant. So I'm assuming that she's pregnant by Angelica's father, Stefano. She didn't reveal who the father was, and so I thought that it was really kind of full circle that she 18 years ago gave up her baby for adoption, and then she was kind of able to be there for basically solving her daughter's murder, and then she kind of gets a second chance at motherhood with the new pregnancy that she's having. And so I would really love to see more of their story. I actually hope that she teamed up with Baroni and they open their own practice, because I don't know, with her being suspended, I don't know if she'll be able to go back into the role as a prosecutor, but I think that she can definitely be a defense lawyer. And so her and Baroni should team up and just take the Italian city that they're in by storm and kind of solve all of these cases and things like that. And so again, I'm really glad that I watched this season. I really do hope that they have a second season. And if you guys haven't watched this season or this show already and you enjoyed this podcast, go ahead and check out the full season. There are some things I didn't cover in detail. I just wanted to cover the high level stuff. And yeah, this was a great show and I'm glad I watched it. So let's go ahead and end this episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.